it's fashionable to talk about organizational culture. Today, we're not talking about fashionable, we're talking about actionable with a person who's done it, been there, and done that. Right here on episode 134 of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Let's go.
Welcome to the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. We are here each week to talk about leadership, teamwork, organizational culture, and human potential with experts from every walk of life. Your host is Kevin Eikenberry, a best-selling author and leadership thought leader for 25 years. This episode is sponsored by Kevin's book, The Long Distance Leader: Rules for Remarkable Remote Leadership. Order your copy today at remarkablepodcast.com/book. And now, here's your host, Kevin.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. I'm here today with Cameron Mitchell. You may or may not know him, but you're going to know him before we're done. So let me tell you about Cameron. He is a lifelong entrepreneur and accomplished businessman. He graduated from the Culinary Institute of America when he was 22. And get this, he has developed 18 different restaurant concepts, including Mitchell's Fish Market and Mitchell's Steakhouse, a total of 22 restaurants that were sold to Ruth's Hospitality Group for a whole bunch of money in 2008. But he still owns Cameron Mitchell Restaurants, and that group remains independent and privately held, recognizing over $300 million in combined annual revenue from its food service operations in 60 restaurants, Cameron Mitchell Premier Events, the Bud Dairy Food Hall, and its sister company, the Rusty Bucket Restaurant and Tavern. He's built this company around the philosophy of the answer is yes. What is the question? It's also the title of his new book that we're going to talk about. By making a raving fan out of everybody touched by the business, from his associates, to guests, to the delivery drivers at the back door. And so we're going to talk about that today. And I'm excited to have Cameron on the show with me. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here.
So I told you before we hit record that when we started this podcast, my goal was to have leadership experts, and we have lots of those, people writing books, and of course, you've done that as well. But we also wanted to have folks who were leaders, expert leaders. And so that's really, I think, the frame from which we bring you on. And again, we will talk about the book. But man, I'm excited to have you to chat about the success that you've had and some of the lessons that you've learned. So you graduate from the Culinary Academy and you decide you're going to be in the restaurant business, and here we are today. Tell us a little bit, just tell us, and this is really sort of the book, but tell us a little bit about the journey. How did you decide that that's the path you wanted to take, and sort of a little bit about the journey over the years?
Sure. I started in high school, actually, washing dishes and working restaurant jobs, and I was a busser, like prep cook and so forth. And I graduated high school, and I didn't want to go right after college because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was working in restaurants, and I was 18 years old, working for beer money, living at home with mom, and kind of going nowhere, and trying to figure out what I want to do in my life. And I had a pretty lousy attitude, and I got suspended from work for being late too many times, and got put on 30 days probation. And during that probationary period, it was a shift change. I was working a double shift in the kitchen, an AM cook and a PM host, and it was pandemonium in the kitchen during shift change. And I had an epiphany. Time froze. I looked across the line in the kitchen. I said, I love this business. This is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And so I went home that night after my double shift and immersed myself and wrote out my goals. And it was to go to the Culinary Institute of America and graduate by the time I was 22, and I'd be executive chef by the time I was 23, and GM at 24, regional at 26, VP of operations at 30, and president of a restaurant company by the time I was 35. So woke my mom up at 1 a.m, said, I know what I want to do with myself the rest of my life. I'm going to be in the restaurant business, and I want to be president of a restaurant company. And so
after she said, why the heck are you waking me up? She was like, yes.
Yeah, she was quite relieved. Let's put it that way, that I knew where I was going. And so next morning I went to work, and the day before I was working for the man and working for beer money and going nowhere and a lousy attitude and lazy. Virtually the next day I was the hardest working guy in the kitchen with the best attitude, working for myself and my future. So, and from the rest there is history, as they say.
Awesome. That is a great story. So there are some people listening who who their son or daughter was you, right? So I will say to all of them, there is hope. There is a moment. So that's a great story. And I'm guessing that you've told that story to a lot of folks in the business over the years.
Oh, many hundreds and hundreds of times, thousands of times, probably.
Right. You know, it's always great for people to know the origin story of folks who've become successful, but oftentimes I'm sure it's been extraordinarily inspirational and instructional to many people as well.
Well, yeah, especially when I talk to young people and talk to them about the power of goal setting and envisioning, painting a vision for your future. It's good stuff.
So, as I said in the introduction, that the title of your brand new book, congratulations, is called Yes is the Answer. What is the question? The subtitle is How Faith in People and a Culture of Hospitality Built a Modern American Restaurant Company. So let's talk about the title. So I know it's part of your philosophy, having been through the book, but talk about why that's the title and why that's such an important concept for you. Yes is the answer. What is the question?
Well, the book goes into our culture and values in great depth. And one of our cultural pillars is the answer is yes, what's the question? Or yes is the answer, what's the question? And so, and that is an attitude within our company that is pervasive all through our company. And people have a tendency to say no, and it's easy to say no. Yes requires action. And so we have that. Doesn't mean you can't bring a gun to work, obviously. The answer is no to that. You can't sexually harass your workmate. The answer is no. But on the same token, we have the pervasive attitude. The answer is yes. And if we can do it, we will.
And so I think most people listening would probably say, well, that makes sense from the customer perspective, but you're saying that more broadly than just the customer, just from the guest perspective. So I want to talk about all that, but I want to talk about the guest first. So you and I were talking again before I hit record that we've had Tom Peters on, and Tom is famous for talking about the whole thing about about customers going way back to the 80s, and the customer's always right kind of Stu Leonard sort of philosophy. So how do you answer the question and say, well, is the customer really always right? Is it really always yes? I mean, other than sexual harassment and guns?
Yeah. Well, that's a couple different answers there. One, we actually believe in our company, the associate comes first. So that is the main thrust of our company culture and values. I actually say as CEO of a restaurant company that we don't even have a direct relationship with our guests. We have a direct relationship with our people we work with every day. And so I look at it as a triangular relationship. We take care of our people take care of our guests, and our guests take care of our company. So and I've had to fire a few guests over the years. It happens. If you come into our restaurants and you want to take advantage of our people and abuse our people, then you're going to find yourself on the way out the door.
Yeah,
I don't believe the guest is always right per se.
So I'm with you, but I'm always love to have that conversation with people, and you're right. The associate, your team member is the front. They're the face of the company. They're the face of the restaurant, not you. They don't even know who you are in most cases, right?
The hallmark of our company is the great people delivering genuine hospitality. And I've been asked the question thousands of times, and that is, where do you get such great people, and how do you deliver such great service? And so, we have all the training programs every other restaurant company has, but it's really the culture and the philosophy that yes is the answer, what's the question, and putting our people first. Our associates come first in our company, and our people love to work for our company and enjoy working for our company. Therefore, they want to take care of our guests. And so that's how we deliver that great guest service day in and day out.
Yeah, so the subtitle of the book includes this phrase, the culture of hospitality. And of course, you talk about it in the book. So, and people listening are from all sorts of industries, of course,
sure.
Not only just hospitality or restaurants. So I'll get to that in a second, but tell people what you mean by a culture of hospitality. What are some of the key components of that from your perspective?
Well, we define ourselves as great people delivering genuine hospitality. So we all know who great people are in our lives. We all have great people in our lives. Delivering means someone's receiving. Genuine means from the heart, and hospitality is defined as treating guests like we treat people in our own home. So that really, lays it out right there in terms of who we are and how we approach hospitality itself.
So again, as I said, some people are going to be listening and saying, maybe being a little bit cynical, or thinking a little bit about how does this apply to me, because they're not in the quote hospitality business. I think I know what your answer is going to be here, but how do you translate that idea? And not that you would propose that people take your statement or try to exactly cookie cut your culture, but how do you take that idea of genuine hospitality out of the hospitality industry? What advice would you have to people in other businesses who are listening about what you mean by that and how that plays out in their businesses?
Well, I think genuine hospitality is care and concern. And so when we think about whether you're going to the doctor's office or going to uh, anything or doing anything, and we see it every day in our life, how people are gruff or people are abrupt, or the answer is no, or there's no, hey, can I do this instead of that? No. And it's full of rigidity. So, it's rigid. And so in our company, um, we operate on the gray areas, and I think genuine hospitality just takes every situation that comes your way and figures out how can we do this the best possible way and take care of our guests and take care of our company and find a way to say yes.
So what I'm hearing in there is the idea of, and you actually said it when you told the story early on, that you took ownership of your own work after the epiphany, right? And so what I'm hearing you say there is you're asking maybe more than asking, maybe expecting your folks to take ownership, right? Because you said yes requires actions. You're asking people, encouraging people, expecting people to take ownership of the work and of themselves. Yes, say more about that. Tell me I'm wrong, whatever.
No, you're absolutely right. We have an underlying culture in our company of hard work, and we take such great care of our people, and our people are number one in our organization. And when they know that, they feel that care and concern, they automatically, then they're free to care about the company, they're free to care about the guests. It amazes me so many times in the hospitality industry, restaurant companies, say the guest comes first and they expect their servers and their staff to take care of the guests all day long and go to extraordinary measures to take care of them. Meanwhile, they don't take care of their own people. And so I don't think it's fair to expect anybody to care about us as a company or care about our guests until we care about them first. And that care radiates and permeates throughout our company.
So you mentioned this again a little bit a second ago. I want to go a little deeper into this idea of, you said you get asked all the time, how do you continue to find great people? So let's talk about that a little bit more, because I think everyone listening, especially at the time in which we're recording this and at the time at which people are listening to this, we're in a full employment economy, and it's harder than ever to find people in general. But I think the question it transcends the economy, though, about recruitment and about attraction and about how do you find, what's advice you have for people about finding great people?
Well, I tell people we find the same people everybody else finds, and we interview and hire the same people everybody else does. The difference is we treat them great. And so, yes, we're in the most difficult labor market I've ever operated in my entire history. It's very, very tight. We have people leaving for another dollar down the street all the time, and it's very, very competitive. But we still enjoy, our turnover rates are less than 50% of the average industry turnover rates because of the way we take care of our people. And we get a lot of people, sometimes they'll even maybe leave for another dollar and they come back because they realize they miss what the great company environment we had to work for. So, and I think pay is number 5 on the list, I think, of importance to people. It's the quality of work, it's the atmosphere and the care and concern that we exhibit for everybody. So I think that's the difference right there.
So here's the thing that I talk about is that all of those 4 above pay are all about what we do as leaders, right? And what we do as the organization. And if we do those things, so turnover is a big reflection, to your point, I think, of our leadership and what we're creating around.
Right. The company had 5% management turnover last year, where industry average is about 40%. I'll give you an indication of how low our retention is.
So here's what I would say to everyone listening is,
High our retention is. Yeah.
right, well, yeah, we knew what you meant. Here's my observation to everyone listening is you don't have to know anything else about Cameron's business, but that one thing, 5% management turnover in an industry where it averages 40, to know that they're profitable. Like, you wouldn't even have to be ever doing everything else right to be profitable. You just did that one, get that one thing right. Comment, thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, so we benchmark ourselves every year against all the publicly held restaurant companies, and we're always in the upper 10 percentile of profitability, percent of profitability against those publicly held companies. And the reason is, one of the reasons is because of that extremely low turnover we have. Turnover costs a fortune. And, you know, by taking care of our people and keeping our people and paying our people very well and giving them a great work environment, we don't spend a ton of money on training and turnover and hiring and everything else because we keep our staff. So that translates directly into increased profitability.
Awesome. So in some ways, you've been answering this since the minute you opened your mouth, Cameron. But the question that I wanted to ask, and it's a question that I'm guessing people who are listening would hope that I would ask, is so, okay, you've been a very successful business person, and you've certainly thought a lot about this. What else would you say about your leadership philosophy that perhaps you haven't already said?
Well, it sounds corny, but it's really the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. You know, here, a perfect example is we're closed 8 major holidays a year. Simply put, I don't want to work on Thanksgiving. Why would I want our people to work on Thanksgiving? And we wouldn't do it. You know, it's just not worth it to me. So, you know, everybody knows I started as a dishwasher, worked my way up through every position throughout the industry, and I've walked in their shoes, and so they know that I care about them. I wouldn't want them to do anything I've never done before, and I don't want to work on the holidays, so they're not going to work on the holidays. It's just that kind of core philosophy about our company and leadership.
So there are also people, we don't know exactly who all is listening or watching us, but I know that there are many people who are leaders inside of organizations and that may have thought about doing what you've done and what I've done, which is to start their own business. And so what, beyond all of the stuff we've talked about, what lessons or comments would you have for people who maybe are aspiring to or thinking about starting a business and being an entrepreneur? What advice beyond the stuff we've talked about culture and leadership would you give to them? What's your comment?
Well, you know, starting your own business, and for me, it was one of the toughest things, if not the toughest thing I've ever done in my life. And I would quickly go to the word fortitude. You know, anybody that wants to start their own business has to have an incredible amount of fortitude. And you have to have an incredible amount of passion, have to be willing to do whatever it takes to get to wherever you want to go. And, you know, I'm a firm believer in goal setting and painting your vision. I spent a lot of time painting our vision within our company of where we're going and why we're going there and how we're going to get there, and getting people to believe in you. And, you know, we talk about in our company about, you know, companies walk the walk or talk the talk. And I say, you know, not only do we talk the talk, we walk the walk. I say we run the walk. So you have to have that kind of passion as a leader and to start a business, because it's extremely challenging.
Awesome. So we have this piece of this show, Cameron, that I didn't tell you about ahead of time, that we call the Fast Break. And before I tell you about the Fast Break, everybody, the Fast Break is brought to you by my latest book, The Long Distance Leader. And so you can learn more and get a sample chapter of The Long Distance Leader by going to longdistanceleaderbook.com. So the Fast Break is 3 ideas that I have for you, Cameron. And I just want you, it's not really a question. It's just, here's this idea. Give us whatever you want to say about it, short or long, but it's your chance to talk very quickly about these 3 ideas. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
First one is accountability.
I love to talk about accountability because people think they have to hold people accountable, right? I don't spend any time holding anybody accountable. It is expected for everybody to hold themselves accountable in our organization. And so That's how we manage and lead our organization. I don't do it myself. I don't, and I find everybody does an amazing job and works 100%. And I don't spend hardly a minute holding anybody accountable. Our culture and values does that.
Perfect. Second, strategic thinking.
I spend a majority of my time in strategic thinking. As I was coming up through the ladder and growing the company, I always say I have one eye downrange and one eye down on the ground, and at all times. And there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about our strategy. And I say I'm chief strategy officer of our company because that's what I do. That's what leaders do. Leaders strategize. They plot, they plan, and they execute. And how I like to paint the picture and where we want to be and how we're going to get there, and then we let it go.
Awesome. And the last one, maybe easier, communication.
I would say 95% of all problems in the restaurant business are caused by lack of communication. So, in my opinion, we cannot over communicate enough. We talk about our culture and values everywhere, every chance we get, internally, externally, and you cannot communicate enough. And the more people know, and the more people believe and know where we're going, the better off we're going to be. So it gets to be kind of a joke in our company sometimes. I've heard that 20 times. Well, okay, we're going to tell you the 21st time. So yeah.
That's great. So we're going to shift now. We're starting to wind down a little bit. And I know that you're in Columbus, Ohio. We had this whole conversation about being a Buckeye fan. I'm not going to hold it against you, Cameron. So what do you do? What do you do for fun? You built this business. You're thinking downrange all the time, painting this vision of the future. What do you do for fun?
Well, I tell people I'm about as deep as a baby pool. I love working. I quote, go to work every day, but I haven't gone to work in 20 years or 25 or 30 years. Number one. Number two, my family. I love spending time with my family. They're utmost importance to me. My friends, and I love to travel, and I love to play golf. I'm a golf nut. So that's really about it. That's how I live my life. But I get just as much enjoyment and playing golf as I do working or spending time with my family and friends. To me, it's just me living.
Beautiful. I just had a feeling about the golf thing. I didn't know, just had a feeling. So I did tell you this question ahead of time. So what's something, Cameron, that you're reading now and read recently, or that you just think people might want to know about that you would recommend to them?
Well, this book has been out for 20 years or 15 years. I'm a Jim Collins disciple. Good to Great is one of my all-time favorite books. I'm reading in the middle of reading Shoe Dog by Phil Knight right now, and that's a pretty entertaining, pretty good book. Great story, American business success story. So, and unfortunately, I've been reading my book.
Yes, over and over, right?
So I haven't been doing a lot of reading lately outside of that.
Well, I get that. Having been in your shoes several times, I totally get that as well. So thanks for that. So maybe the last question I have, and maybe the one you've most wanted me to ask you, Cameron, is where can people learn more about the book and you and the restaurants?
Well, CameronMitchell.com for sure is our website, and you can see everything about us. You can order the book over the website, etc. The book will be out and online. Can be found online or in the bookstores here October 30th. And it's hopefully people enjoy it. It's a legacy project for our people more than anything internally. After I'm up in the big restaurant in the sky, that we memorialized the story and who we are and what we are. But also, I think anybody in the service business or the restaurant business, I'm a student of the restaurant industry. I think any people in that category would enjoy reading the book also. It's a two-part story about my Horatio Alger story from high school dropout and last of my class to building an American restaurant company. And then it's about our culture. The second piece is our culture and values at work and how we apply those.
Yeah, and I think that's an excellent point. And I didn't mention that earlier, but so any of you, if you've enjoyed our conversation, you're going to definitely want to get a copy of yes is the answer, what is the question? And I think that's exactly right. I mean, you know, because you read it like 12 times, but it really is those two things. There's a story component for sure. It goes into a lot more depth than Cameron and I were able to do in this last few minutes. And it goes into a lot of depth. So I would say not just a restaurant business, not just hospitality, but for any of us, if you've enjoyed this conversation, been challenged by this conversation, you're going to want to get a copy of this book. And so now my question to all the rest of you listening and watching is, now what? What are you going to do? What action are you going to take from what you heard? You heard one of the very first things that Cameron said is that yes requires action. And while I can't require action of you, I'm urging you to take action on something that you got from the last little bit, whether it's buying a copy of the book or whether it's taking some action, some idea that you heard from Cameron about what you need to do in your organization, what you need to think about differently with your team as you lead them. So I challenge you to do that. So Cameron, thank you so much for spending some time with me and with us today. It was a pleasure to visit with you.
My pleasure. It's been great. Terrific. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. And so everybody, if this is your first episode, why? We're here every week. You can come on back and you can go listen to the others before this, but every week a new episode with another leadership expert or, like Cameron, expert leader. We're right here on the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Come on back.